Dan, you brought some books for us to see. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about this book that's in front of you.
Yes, sure, of course. You know, it took 10 years to write the first book. It was learning how to even write a book, right? And each week I get better at writing. I think about writing. I try to do something almost every day regarding writing. Starpoints, Connections Old and New was my first novel. I'm currently editing the second book in the Japan series, Japanese Ghosts in America, which is a whole nother journey, a whole nother learning experience. Starpoints, Connections Old and New takes place in Japan. So if they're mysterious stories related to Japan, the idea is, in this case, I have a personal experience and or learning related to the cultural points included. So if anybody's interested in Japanese culture or world cultures and things like that, and mysteries, they can go to japanseries.com, www.japanseries.com, and find out more about it. I mean, it's really it's not biographical, but I've had experiences that are related to this book. So I did that on purpose. And in each book of the Japan series, Japanese culture points are going to show up.
I like the idea of interjecting your own experiences into it. It's something that you can groom and make sure it fits within the book itself. But I think giving of yourself is really a strong part of writing.
Yeah. And I'm learning to share all the time. The second book as well, I'm learning about the Heian period. So I actually went and had to dig into some of that information.
Really? Oh.
And the third book is going to be a pilgrimage set in Japan. It's a murder mystery. So each time it gets a little bit more intense, or a little bit more I learn about writing. So each book is its own journey.
I think that we're going to be going to put you on as a reader at an actual place where you've read.
Right.
And so can we talk a little bit about what it's like to stand up in those places? And we usually stand up.
So I'm very fortunate because I have experience as a teacher in a high school, a teacher in Japan. I've been on stage many times, and it's not hard for me to read in public. But this book, the little background on it, there's a couple living in Japan. There's a couple living in Japan who are sort of stumble upon this mystery of the star points. That's why it's called Star Points. And it's all about this, how they get involved in this, looking for the star points. And so I'm going to be reading from just as that kicks off. That'll be the part that I'm reading from.
Well, this has been really interesting. I've enjoyed talking to you. Are there any other things that you think are important having to do with writing that we could share with our audience?
Maybe I'm repeating myself, but as you write, I get better each time.
Okay.
Right. So the progression of it, you just learn more and more each time, and I'm learning on purpose now, and so it's really gone from finishing a book that I had thought of I'd kind of like to write a book in high school to now I'm really learning about the details of writing and putting together a novel, and how do you construct it and how do you make it described so that somebody can follow along. So I hope you enjoy the reading that I'll be giving next. And thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. I think we're getting to the time when we have to say, this is it. But I really appreciated having you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there, we're at Dunn Brothers in Chaska. I'm a member of the Authors Collective and the Chanhassen Writers Group from the Chanhassen Library. Together we've been doing book readings and readings of our writing at venues such as coffee shops, bookstores, and libraries. We've really enjoyed this experience. We've been so fortunate, and we're building this community of people growing together. So again, thank you for allowing us to read at Dunn Brothers in Chaska. And I'm going to be reading from Starpoints, Connections Old and New, my first novel. I'm Dan O'Brien, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity. We've been reading for over a year now, and we're just having a blast. We love sharing our work with each other and the world. Starpoint's connection to old and new is a 10-year-old project. About 10 years ago, I was sleeping on a tatami mat in Japan on a very hot summer night. I looked up and saw the moon, and it struck me to start writing. I'd been wanting to write a novel since I was in high school, and my first novel began that night. And I started to write what became Summer Breeze, a chapter I'm going to read from tonight. Yuri, a Japanese woman, is married to a man from Germany, and they're living in Tokyo, Japan. This young international couple stumbles upon a mystery of the star points. They stumble and they become embroiled in this mystery about how to find the star points while living in Japan. They, like many newly married couples, had just had a fight, and Yuri was out on the engawa, the wraparound porch that goes around porches on a Japanese home, cooling off. She was thinking, since it was a hot summer night, about World War II, and for a while she was lost in thought of people having to stay inside on hot summer nights, hiding any light they used so that their house would not be seen by World War II bombers. Then Barrett slid open the shoji, or paper door, and offered a reconciliation ocha, or hot green tea. She gladly accepted taking his hand and leading him to sit down beside her. She especially liked making up, never able to stay angry with him for long. They shared several passions, and one passion they shared was learning about the world. Yuri did this by learning about languages and world cultures. Barrett did this by exploring science and supernovas. The two of them sat enjoying the evening breeze and playing a word game on the porch for about 20 minutes when suddenly Yuri stood up on the engawa and exclaimed, "Just a minute, look at that!" As quickly as he could, Barrett stood up and, looking to the right between two nearby houses, gray in the moonlight, he saw an old building in the distance that looked like an abandoned apartment building. At least that is what he thought Yuri had been pointing at, but he wasn't sure. At first he wasn't even sure why she had pointed it out, then it suddenly became clear. He saw a light that flashed. It was not a bright light, and it flashed intermittently, and the fact that it was randomly going on and off would normally have hindered people from noticing it at all. However, since Yuri had pointed it out, Barrett was now sure of it. There could be no mistaking that there was something flashing in that building in the moonlight along that narrow road in Tokyo. It was as though someone was turning the light on and off, seemingly on purpose, though for all his reasoning and logic, he couldn't imagine why. Yuri had that look she gets when she's really thinking hard. She holds the edge of her mouth up on the right side and holds her lips tightly together. Barrett was about to ask her what she thought it was when she was down from the engawa and into the niwa, or garden. She was gone before he could utter a word. Barrett looked for his sandals and, stumbling into them, went quickly after her. She was walking down the alley, her wooden sandals called geta, making the click-clacking sounds Japanese say sound like karan koron, karan koron. It was like something out of the Edo period in which samurai flourished, but with an intensity and purpose that would surprise even samurai, so Barrett thought. Then he too quickened his pace, hoping to catch up. Barrett thought they should be more quiet, but Yuri was walking so quickly that it was all he could do just to catch up to her. And that happened when they were only a few paces away from the building they had seen from their own engawa moments before. "Now what?" he said between breaths as he looked over the building before them. "We'll have to go around to the other side," she said quietly, noticing how odd it might look if someone noticed them observing a building that may not have had tenants for the past 20 years. And so they began, now ever more careful to be quiet, to go to the other side, continually thinking about who or what they might find inside the building. They could not help but wonder who was turning the light on and off, nor could they figure out why, at least not from where they were. They made it around to the other side, being sure to walk in the shadows when possible. They were convinced by now that it would be best not to be seen trying to get a look into the building. They also gradually came to the understanding, without having to say anything to each other, that they would have to go. inside. This is Dan O'Brien, author of the Japan series, Mysterious Stories Related to Japan. Any information can be found about this book or coming novels. For example, Japanese Ghosts in America is in the editing stages now, my second book, at www.japanseries.com. Thank you so very much. It's such a joy to read with the members of the Authors Collective and Chanhassen Writers Group, and we really appreciate places like Dunn Brothers and Chaska that allow us to read in public. Thank you very much.